Throughout time, roller coasters have come and gone. Only some become legends for their intensity and thrills. Each and every year, coaster fans like you venture to the parks, searching for that one special ride that stands out above the rest. You submitted your rankings, and now it's time to reveal the group of elite roller coasters that you have voted as the best of the best. COASTER-net Uncut is proud to present the return of the Thrilling 32.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Thrilling 32. That's right, Andy, we're back for the Wood Coaster first round tonight here, the kickoff of the Thrilling 32 reveal shows. We've got lots of them coming your way here in this year's Thrilling 32 Bracket Challenge under the OG format, as we explained in the selection show the other week. So, Andy, you know, we've got the typical field of wood coasters. We have a couple of newcomers this year. Coney Island Cyclone coming back in after a multi-year hiatus, and we have a first-time appearance in Tonnerre to Zeus. But other than that, you know, the normal array of wood coasters here. So, I mean, what are you expecting out of this first round tonight here? Because there are some difficult matchups in this first round.
In 2 words, not much. We are talking about wood coasters here, so like you said, not much has changed, and we don't really see a whole lot of extra stuff being added or subtracted. Although I do feel like we're going to see some movements on some of those European coasters. I think things to look out for, things like Balder.
Yeah.
I can't remember any of the ones. Who gives a shit? They're wood coasters.
No, Balder, I think, is a good one.
Yeah.
To be, you know, we'll have to see how that goes up. We're gonna get to Balder very quickly. It's in
Very
the first
quickly
group.
here.
And then a little bit later, we'll talk about Rutschebanen from Tivoli Gardens. You know, that has a that has a pretty difficult, I would say, first round matchup against I think it's going up against Ravine Flyer 2, which has historically done
done fairly well in this poll. So yeah, so well, and you know what, I'm gonna have my my thrilling32.com website up here as well, so I can look at some stuff from last year, which would be wise. I think maybe it might be wise for the wood. So you want to get into the first round here?
Yeah, let's get to the first group. It's the Son of Beast group. Our first matchup was Mystic Timbers and Phoenix. And so we're recording this. We're still, at the time of recording this, we're still accepting submissions at the time here. And, you know, we'll go through these pretty quickly here, so we're not here all night. But this one, pretty even split, a slight advantage to Mystic Timbers from the people who've submitted brackets so far here, but almost a 50-50 split, but a slight edge towards Mystic Timbers. What do you think about that?
You know, I hate ranking Phoenix because, you know, whenever I look at these brackets, Phoenix is always the ride that throws me off. Because I know how much people love it. I know how it wins golden tickets, despite that poll being completely irrelevant now. And Phoenix is one I always in my mind, overrank. But when you look at the historical numbers with Phoenix, even last year, Phoenix was ranked number 9. But then last year, Mystic Timbers was ranked number 10. So I think, you know, in your mind, you think, oh, Phoenix is going to win this real easy. But when then you actually look at the actual numbers of how these polls usually wind up going, Mystic Timbers and Phoenix are traditionally pretty close together on this list. I think I give Mystic Timbers the slight edge on my own rankings over Phoenix. Phoenix was a bit of a disappointment. The last time I wrote it was with you. I don't know if it's just your company that made it more of a disappointment.
Most likely.
Most likely just your company.
Do not let my presence be the reason that you do not enjoy Phoenix.
And I'll be completely honest with you. I actually thought Twister was the better ride in the park.
You are there are plenty of people who share that opinion.
Like and like I hadn't ridden Phoenix for a better part of a decade, and having come back to it, like when you write stuff early on in your credit count, you tend to slightly overrank things, I think. And then when I came back to it, I was slightly disappointed with how it actually rode. And I was really impressed by the way Twister rode that. I didn't really remember at all Twister. But I was really impressed by Twister and what that did.
Twister's been great the last couple years since they
it
did some work to it.
Yeah, it really has been. I think in this poll though, I think Phoenix is going to win over Mystic Timbers.
All right, so you're gonna pick Phoenix there. So of the brackets submitted so far, slightly more people going with Mystic Timbers. But moving on to the second round is Phoenix from Knobles. So already, after one matchup, more than half the people, it seems, are already 0 for 1 here. I don't have last year's rankings up. You said you have that up, so we'll have to
Yeah.
rely on you for some of that. But it doesn't get it doesn't get any easier in the second round, in the second matchup here, because we've got Balder from Lisaberg going up against Troy from Toverland. And this is another one where a near 50-50 split in the bracket submitted so far, but a slight edge being given to Balder on this one.
Well, Troy traditionally last year came in at number 12. Balder came in at, ooh, where the hell did Balder come in at? Am I missing?
Balder was oddly low last year.
Balder was 21. I personally think that is completely incorrect. And once again, I have critical thinking ability. I've seen POVs of both of them. I think Balder is the far superior right there. And I do believe that I think a lot of you guys who went over there for the first time this summer had very positive things to say. So the question is, did Balder make that jump? And I'm going to say yes, Balder did make that jump, because I everything I've heard about Balder from even people outside of your group before, they've all said that Balder's far better than El Toro. And I think you echoed that too, right? No?
Yeah, and I mean that it's not a surprise that I'm saying that, but
No.
that's an opinion that many people hold as well. And quite frankly, I think it's a good opinion. I do rank Balder higher than Troy myself. I it's not a terrible gap. But I do think Balder is definitively the better ride. And I got some hate messages from Alex Baker over putting this matchup in the first round, because he is very much a Troy fan, but also very much enjoyed our Balder ERT. So he was none too pleased with this matchup selection. So moving on to go up against the Phoenix will be Balder from Lisaberg.
Ooh, our
Topples
first
Troy's.
upset.
Yeah. Now, fun fact, we'll get to this a little bit towards the end, but from again the Qualtrics metrics here, quite a large percentage of people were heavily using last year's rankings as their selection criteria here. So that suggests that makes sense why this was a very difficult one to pick, and why so many people were split here. So these first two matchups, nearly 50-50 splits on the picks. So there's probably quite a few people who are 0 for 2 so far.
Well, and that's our first real indication of what might happen in this tournament. And I know all your picks are in already, so that you can't really change them. But that's our first indication of where this poll might be going very soon. So some of you guys may have not have even. People are complaining to me. Why don't you have last year's numbers up? Why don't you have last year's rankings up? Guys, I was trying to help you out.
Yeah, this was not necessarily.
Don't even open the file.
Those rankings were not necessarily a tool.
No. So please, I was trying to help you, but
they were the hammer and you needed a screwdriver.
Yeah, right.
So the next one here is Texas Stingray going up against Boulder Dash, and this one is, at least based on the historical data, is one that is Boulder
just
Dash
completely ridiculous that Boulder Dash was ranked 6th last year. Just completely ridiculous. It's one, and then Texas Stingray is ranked 26. So this one to me is an easy one that Boulder Dash is probably going to win this easily, but just still ridiculous that Boulder Dash is still hanging around these polls when it's not that good of a ride. And I think more people are getting out to lake compounds. that are discovering the same thing I discovered many,
Well,
many
the problem
moons
is
ago.
Boulder Dash isn't open half the time. So
Well, well, even when it is, it still sucks. So that's the problem. That's the second half of the problem. So it's still a terrible, it's still a boring ride. Like, come on now. Like,
well, and
anyway,
Texas Stingray, at least the first couple years it's been open, is one of those rides that's just happy to be in the Thrilling 32. It seems
yes,
it's been towards the
yes.
bottom here. So yeah, it is Boulder Dash moving on here to the second round in the Son of Beast group here. So I don't think that's terribly surprising to most people. The majority of people picking Boulder Dash to advance here. But you know,
Not
we'll see.
surprising at all.
Well, and yeah, I don't think that's surprising at all. All right, so the last matchup here in the Son of Beast group to see who goes up against Boulder Dash will be a battle of two GCIs out in the Midwest at Cedar Fair Parks. We've got Renegade and Prowler. And Andy, despite the large gap between where these two rides typically rank, still a pretty even split, a 60-40 split from the brackets submitted so far. In favor of Renegade. So more people leaning towards Renegade, but still a lot of people holding out hope that Prowler will be rightfully ranked one of these years.
I've given up hope. I don't understand the Prowler hate in this poll. It's
I,
one of the
I don't either.
mind-boggling parts of this that Prowler last year ranked number 22 underneath Boulder. We saw Boulder jump up this year. Maybe we'll see Prowler. Doubtful though. Renegade number 11, which I think is like Renegade. If and I will say this, if Renegade is the 11th best roller coaster in this world, we got a real issue with wood roller coasters then because
Yeah, I really love Renegade. I think I have it in my top 20, but top 11 is a
yeah,
little
like
steep for me.
that's we got a real issue with wood roller coasters. You might as well
And
not write
I think I
anything.
still have Prowler higher. Like I think they're both in my top 20. I rank them close, but I have Prowler I think a little bit higher.
Yeah, I have Prowler at like in my top five, so where it
Yeah.
should be, being that's a fantastic roller coaster. But I don't think this is the year. I don't, even though Zambezi Zinger, like I feel like
Yeah,
drawn,
that's a fair shout.
maybe may have drawn some people out there, but I just don't think Zinger was enough of a draw. Like if they put in like, I don't know, like a Cannon or something like that, maybe maybe people would
Wrong
get up
state.
there. Now there are heavy rumors that Orient Express might be coming back there, so maybe we get a mock coaster out there or something,
That'd be
or
kind of
maybe a
cool.
Vekoma. I don't know. Any of those things would be awesome, and that maybe that brings people to the park and gets Prowler up there. But this year, no, I don't think so. I think Renegade's gonna take this one again.
And it is Renegade moving on to face Boulder Dash. So in the
Oh,
first round
poor
here in the Son of
Prowler.
Beast group, we've got Phoenix defeating Mystic Timbers, Balder defeating Troy, Boulder Dash defeating Texas Stingray, and Renegade defeating Prowler. So those rides will go up against each other in the next round. So now let's move on to the Pegasus group where we had quite an interesting collection of coasters here. And our first matchup is Colossus from Heide Park in Germany going up against the Legend from Holiday World. And, this is one of those weird ones where Legend, kind of like Prowler, has never done particularly well in this poll. Maybe did better in the early years. When there was less ridership and less voters, and we weren't having another record year every single year.
Yeah,
But Colossus has also been
it's not
a,
done well either.
no, well, Colossus has been a little bit of a ping pong ball because it's gone back and forth a little bit historically. But where were these two last year?
So last year, Colossus was chimed in at number 24. Legend chimed in at number 18. So Legend has the decided advantage. Plus, Legend also has the advantage of a lot of people speaking very highly of it at last year's Hollywood Nights. I was on one of our final Patreon shows. We did a live chat when we streamed, when we
Legend
premiered.
was very good last year.
And that would seem to be echoed amongst the group when Legend came up here during the premiere of the selection show. A lot of people are saying Legend was significantly better than it had been running in previous years.
Mhm.
I'm still an old school Legend guy. I still can't get over the
Sure.
fact that they changed it at all. But
Yeah.
people were saying a lot of good things that maybe it's coming a lot closer to the way it used to run.
Yeah.
I don't think it will ever run the way it did run, but at least get closer to
That 2015 year was something.
Jesus. I tell you what, that was something. That whole event will live in the annals of history. That
Yeah, well. So it's interesting you mentioned that because I've always remembered Legend as one of those rides that was just kind of happy to be in the Thrilling 32 and
yeah,
Colossus. For some reason, in earlier years, I feel like Colossus had pretty regularly been higher than Legend.
yeah.
But the fact that Legend was higher last year, um, sort of explains why 76% of the current submitted brackets have Legend moving on. Because I thought that that's one that would have had very close to a 50-50 split like some of the earlier ones, but a decided preference to picking Legend here from the voters so far. And it is Legend moving
Mm-hmm.
on here. So Legend does outrank Colossus again this year. Again, we'll see at the end, where it ends up in the final tally. But Legend moving on, and I feel like Legend is a ride that doesn't typically win in the first round because it's usually in that lower half.
Yeah.
A Legend moving on past the first round of a Thrilling 32, I feel like is a rare event.
I
Um,
don't think it's something that happens quite regularly, that's for sure. Um,
no, and speaking of rides that don't move on quite regularly,
well, Jesus, you are talking about the bottom of the barrel here, aren't you, right now?
yeah, I mean Q Cullen, which has never advanced in any of the Thrilling 32s, if memory serves, going up against Tenair Tuzus, which is a ride that has never been in the Thrilling 32. So maybe a little bit of Thrilling 32 history to be made
Well,
one way or
someone's got to win
another.
here. Someone's got to win
Well,
the
and
last place battle.
It's interesting because Tenair 2 Zeus recently had the retrack done by Gravity Group, and some and I think did they put like modified timber liners on it or something? But there
Are
were
you
some
asking me this question seriously?
well, there were some people who were saying that like the new retrack, it doesn't quite have the pacing it used to, which makes sense because the timber liners are lighter and they don't
Yeah.
have quite the pace. And people say that like this new version, while much smoother than the old version was, it's kind of like you get to the hills where there ought to be a lot of airtime, like the old school CCIs, and it's like kind of there. But that's how a lot of these rides that had been retrofitted with timber liners like Hades 360 is the same way. They actually had to reprofile that hill coming back underneath the lift hill to make it shorter. So it didn't lose so much speed there. And Voyage would have been the same way. People always talked about how Voyage was much slower when they were using the timber liners on it. So this one here again, without Tonnerre Tuzus ever being in, and Q Cullen having been in the past, that's the one that I think people would tend to gravitate towards. At least that's what I would have thought. But a 70-30 preference to Tonnerre 2 Zeus
Really?
from the
Because like Kukulin was 31, Tenair 2 Zeus was 35. So they're not that far off from one another, although Tenair 2 Zeus was never in the 30 and 32. They still ranked number 35 last year. So
So it being in, are people thinking that it had enough of a jump to maybe leapfrog Q Cullen?
which
Is that
which
maybe what this is?
boggles my mind considering what you just said that they made the ride worse and it's gonna make a jump. Like, but hey, welcome to the thrilling 32.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, what do you say? Use some common sense here and
Yeah.
don't beat yourself on some of these tough matchups here. I think, maybe people were looking for a Cinderella where there wasn't one to be had, because it's Q Cullen moving on to the second round here. So a 70-30 split in favor of Tonnerre 2 Zeus from the submissions, but the majority is wrong here at this point because it is Q Cullen moving on to play Legend.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup, but I don't think the end result is interesting. But maybe I don't know, who cares?
And
Legend though
speaking,
has a real shot now, doesn't it? Though all of a sudden,
oh,
Legend making a run.
it kind of feels that way, doesn't it? I mean, it
Yeah.
feels like all of a sudden we got two Holiday World rides on a crash course for each other because speaking of matchups that aren't in any doubt here. We've got poor Joris Enderdrock once again with a tough matchup from Efteling against the king of wood coasters here, the Voyage from Holiday World. No surprise, 100% of the voters have selected Voyage to move on
Well, I'm
in
glad
this
that
matchup
happened so
here.
far.
I don't think that's shocking anyone. Is there really anything to be said
No,
here?
no, no.
Nope. No, there is not. Voyage is moving on. Joris Enderdrock, thanks for playing. You've made the thrilling 32 again. Congratulations.
See you next year.
A very worthy ride, and we will probably see you next year. So all right, let's keep moving right on to a matchup that I think a lot of people loathed during the selection show.
Yeah.
The P&E coaster, the coaster that always seems to screw people over, going up against Gold Striker, the big GCI out there, California's Great America. Now, before I talk about what the submissions so far are leaning towards, where did these rank last year? Because
So,
again, I'm having trouble remembering.
Gold Striker came in at 4.
Okay.
Coaster came in at 7. The percentage difference, Gold Striker is 92.52 and Coaster was 91.53. So almost a full percentage point separates the two rides. That's a big
Okay.
that's a big hill, especially in the wood coasters, where 1 percentage point separates a lot of coaster, like less than 1% separates a lot of these divisions here.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, and if you look at the percentages, a lot of times you see clusters of rides where you
Yeah.
see a lot clustered together in like groups of 4 or 5. And then every once in a while you see a jump of like 1 or 2 full percentage points, and there's like an obvious tier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of interesting. I wonder if people are actually looking at those tiers and saying, okay, I can expect some shufflings here, but this ride isn't going to drop below here because that's like another tier down. Um, so again, people told us in the Qualtrics forum that they were relying heavily on specifically last year's rankings because we had a different option in there for older rankings. And there are older rankings, I think, where Coaster was higher than Gold Striker, but people most heavily leaned on last year's rankings. And that is bared out in these numbers. 90% of the people are picking Gold Striker to move on here. That's a shocking number to me based on where Coaster and how close they've been over the years.
I think you've tricked enough people with Coaster over the years. So I think a lot of people are onto your
They're
trick.
just not having it this year.
They're just not having it this year. So I think that's why they went with Gold Striker. I would probably tend to agree with them to go with Gold Striker is probably the wise idea.
It probably is the wise idea, and it is the prevailing theory because Gold Striker is moving on.
Yeah.
So that'll wrap up the Pegasus group here. We've got Legend beating Colossus, Hugh Cullen beating Tonnerre Tuzus, Voyage beating Joris Enderdrock, and Gold Striker knocking off the Coaster. So we'll see those 4 coasters in the next round. So we're halfway through here tonight. Any surprises to you here at this point, Andy?
No, the biggest upset was probably the Balder upset, and I didn't really think that was much of an upset, to be completely honest with you. So
No, I mean that's one of those upsets that, quite frankly, you might have seen coming, right?
yeah,
I mean
that's one you
that's one.
probably should have predicted,
Yeah.
knowing anything that goes on this channel.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. But still a lot of matchups that were like 65-35, 60-40, 70-30. So there's
Mhm.
certainly a lot of people out there with several wrong.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to the Scamper group here, and we're starting with Ravine Flyer 2 from Waldemere Park going up against the Rochebanen from Tivoli Gardens. And again, this is one we talked about in the selection show, as this is another one of those Europe rides that was on the trip here that has slowly over the last 2 or 3 years has started gaining some momentum. And now you've got an influx of voters, and one of 3 things can happen. It can really shoot up, it could drop significantly, or if the lesser voters had already ridden it and had it about right, it could stay about the same.
Well, thank you for
And
giving us all 3 possible things that it could do.
Well, I'm just trying to
Yes,
help people out, right? There's not really a fourth option.
not really a fourth option
There's not
besides,
really a
yeah,
fourth option.
besides
Um,
being disqualified for some reason. I don't know why.
okay, so well, yeah, that's the thing. Now this was a little surprising to me here, and I don't know if people just aren't buying the Europe hype, or what, but 70% going with Ravine Flyer 2 here. Is that a surprise to you?
Well, Ravine Flyer 2 last year was 20. Rish Sabanin was 23. Separated by, I'm not a mathematician, by about 1.5%. So we're looking at a pretty a margin. I won't say a wide margin, but a definite margin.
Yeah.
But we know
They're
that
kind of within the same tier though.
I will say though, it's hard for me to speak on this because I have never watched a POV of Rich Sabanin ever. So I don't really have any critical thinking ability here. Because it has to be
Not that you
informed
would anyway,
critical
but go
thinking.
on.
It's not just critical thinking because I'm brilliant. It's informed critical thinking. So being that I've never watched a POV of it, I really can't say. I like Ravine Flyer 2. I've always called Ravine Flyer 2 Voyage Light. Um,
Yep.
I think Ravine Flyer 2 is exactly where it should be on this list, around the 20s. I feel that's a good ranking for it, maybe a little higher here and there. Um, but I have no idea about Rich Sabanin, so I got nothing for you there.
There is some novelty with Richibanen too. I mean, it's a very unique ride. Not just because it's the old scenic railway, but the theme is well done. It's got very good theming. And it's just a lot of fun. So moving on from this matchup, the ride begins with an R. It is Rutsche moving on. So Rutsche knocks off Ravine
Okay.
Flyer 2 here. So again, about 70% of the people having this one wrong here, at least at the time of recording. So this is a big one. We talked about in the selection show where it's unless there's a big upset, it's very likely that in order to win this, you need to have both champions right. And when the difference is 1, maybe 2 points, matchups like this one are gonna matter. So if you had if you're one of the 30% that had Rutsche winning this matchup, I think you're in a pretty good spot to possibly win this thing at this point in the early going. Next up, we've got
Oh.
Shivering Timbers and Rampage, which, it's interesting. We didn't even talk about this in our
We forgot
recent
about
update
this
here.
story on our
But
last update.
Rampage, apparently, there's rumors out there, maybe Titan Track or RMC
Maybe
Track.
joining the Steel list next year, Danny Miller.
Well, yeah, or at least in 2025, it's going to be closed all of next
Yeah,
year.
well, true.
Uh,
Yeah, no, there.
this is one where we saw a big jump last year from Shivering Timbers after the COASTER-net event there, and I think people are expecting the momentum to continue because 75% of people picking Shivering Timbers here.
And what's interesting is I believe I still have Rampage higher on my own list. I
I
like Shivering
did until
Timbers.
last year. I moved Shivering Timbers back up ahead of Rampage after
Did you
last year.
really? I think I
I
still have
did.
Rampage above it. I won't swear to that because I did move Shivering Timbers up myself. Um,
To
but
me, they're in a similar tier though. If I'm ranking coasters in tiers, they're in the same tier for me.
yeah, they're real close. So last year Rampage was 15, Shivering Timbers was 16. Separated by
Oh, did someone put two rides that rank next to each other against each other in a matchup
that's
this year?
amazing. I can't believe that
Isn't that funny
somebody
how
could
that
have
works?
done that. And they were
So wait, which one
separated.
was higher? Shivering Timbers was
Shivering
higher?
Timbers was higher by point. Now, I'm no mathematician here. Hold on. 0.3%, just about 0.3%.
Okay, so yeah, so that's point 0.3 that's not point 0.3 points, that's 0.3%.
That's
So that's point zero
0.3%. So that's
zero
less than
three.
1% separated these two.
Okay.
One of the closest margins in between them, I believe, like between two rides. Well, no, there's between 5 and 6. El Toro and Boulder Dash last year was separated by, it was 91.8 for both of them. El Toro have 98.86 and Boulder Dash had 85. Both of those rankings are incorrect though, so I don't know what the people are thinking.
That's true.
Anyway,
So
Um,
yeah, I'm a little surprised that this one is so lopsided, considering that they were so next to each. So it seems like what I'm learning from some of this Qualtrics data, and this is really good stuff because we've never really gone this deep into it. What I'm learning from this is that people at least don't seem to be using the percentages, and we didn't post last year's rankings right away, so some of these probably didn't
once
have
again,
the
trying to help
percentages.
you.
Well, right. But some people are purely looking at the ranking and not necessarily the score.
And the scores are actually really like I know the ranking follows the score. So at some point, yes, the ranking follows the score, but you get an idea of what is actually separating these rides. Like
You
you
really need to like plot them out on a chart, right? So you can see how close to each other they are.
yeah, you really get a good sense of okay, there's a big jump here. Like even if they
Yeah.
you could have a voyage and a lightning rod, and there's a full 2 points in between those two of them versus 5 and 6. There's 0.01 between the two of them.
Yeah.
Like that's a toss. That's a coin toss versus voyage and lightning rod being no. There's no real comparison, even though they're 1 and 2.
Yeah. I mean, there was a canyon there between those
So
two
in
last
this one, we're talking about a 0.03 or 0.3%,
percent.
not 0.3, 0.3%. Um, I'm going to still go with Shivering Timbers, even though I like Rampage better, but I'm going to go with Shivering Timbers. I feel Shivering Timbersy tonight.
You would be correct. It is Shivering Timbers
Oh,
moving on. Shivering Timbers knocks off Rampage. So the Shivering Timbers resurgence of sorts here is going to continue for another year here because it's moving on. And
and I
you're
don't think Rampage ever recovers. Like once Rampage
right.
goes to
No.
Steel, like I think we have seen its final ranking. I don't see a big bump in ranking because no new people are going to be able to ride Rampage in theory. Well, depending on how they actually retrack it too. Are
Yeah,
they
if
going
they're
to do
just
like a
doing parts
Wolverine
of it,
Wildcat? Like Wolverine Wildcat only retracked the first hill. Like, and at some point this becomes stupid. Like trying to figure out
yeah,
what's wood and
it's
what's steel. We've had that discussion already, but
a wise man once said we're pontificating way too much.
yeah, that's well,
So
that's what we do here.
so what do you, so I mean, not to look ahead too much, but I mean, is Shivering Timbers now the favorite against Rich Panin in the next
I would
round?
assume so.
I think it
I would
probably
assume
is, right?
so. Like you
So
have a full Rich Tabanin was 85.09. Shivering Timbers is 80. You got three full points separating the two of them.
that's a lot.
That's a lot
That's
to
a lot.
overcome,
Okay.
even with European jabronis voting all of a sudden.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to see how that comes out in the wash and then in the next round. Continuing in the Scamper group here, we've got two logos with lots of flames in them. We've
Ooh.
got Wildfire from Kolmården in Sweden going up against Hades 360 from Mount Olympus and Wisconsin Dells. And even though Wildfire has dropped every year pretty much since coming into this thing, I still don't think, even if it drops again, I don't think it's dropping below Hades
No, no, no,
360.
no, 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 no.
The people seem to agree here. Actually, a consensus here, 100% of the people going with Wildfire in this matchup. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
that doesn't surprise me at all.
It is Wildfire moving on here. I don't think that surprises almost anybody here. So Wildfire is moving on to the second round here in the Scamper group, and it will face the winner of the Battle of Dollywood, and it's Thunderhead going up against Lightning Rod. Again, Lightning Rod still being ranked by enough people here as a wood coaster here. So technically defunct as a wood coaster, I think
Yeah.
by many accounts. And again, a pretty clear consensus here. Just a couple of people not picking Lightning Rod here.
Yeah, this is another one that should be a gimme.
Yeah, and it is Lightning Rod moving on. So, as fate would have it, we've got Lightning Rod and Wildfire going up against each other here. So I don't know. I said not to look ahead too much, but Lightning Rod's been the number 2 ride for the last several years here. What are your initial thoughts on knowing that we've got Lightning Rod and Wildfire next time?
Well, because you guys rode Wildfire, so I think all bets are off. We've already seen Balder jump up significantly. We don't really know about Wildfire because Hades is not that kind of competitor in this. That's hard to tell. Wildfire probably would have beat Hades regardless of if you guys went on a trip there. So the question is, how far did Wildfire go? We don't really know about that right now. And then you got Shivering Timbers moving on for the first time against Rushtabanen. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I feel like the Wildfire ranking this year is going to be interesting, along with the Balder ranking. I'm not going to discount that one too. I keep talking about that.
Yeah, so Balder, Rutschbanen, and Wildfire, the three big wood coasters that we rode on the Scandinavia trip, all advanced in the
And I
first round.
feel like Rich Tabana is the one that you can probably I don't throw out. Maybe I don't know, but you never know with your European jabronis either. So.
Well, that's right.
That is right. Oh,
You never know. All right, we got one more group to go here tonight. We've got the
I
roll.
like to say I love this logo you've chosen for Coney Island Cyclone. By the way,
It's some of the other ones are just like there's not a whole lot of good logos to find for that one
no,
because it's mostly just text.
yeah.
And we already spent a lot of time talking about fonts tonight, so I guess we'll move on
Yeah,
from
why
that.
not? Why not continue our font discussion? And actually, this logo is one I've actually never seen before. I've never seen that.
Well, usually the logos you see are like just the cyclone part where it's got like the
Yeah,
lights, like the bulbs in it, and I thought
yeah,
that was boring, so I put the whole logo in it. And
yeah. I've never seen that
it
before.
looks all right. I put the white background on. It looks kind
It
of cool.
fits the classic nature of it.
It does.
That's okay. It's not like Thunder Striker. Like you like Thunder
This
Striker.
is a better logo than Thunderstrike. It's
Oh,
supposed to look 100 years old.
yeah. No, yeah. So anyway, let's continue.
All right, so our first matchup here, we've got Outlaw Run from Silver Dollar City going up against the Raven from Holiday World. The other two Holiday World wood coasters won in their
Hmm.
matchups. Can the Raven make it 3 for 3 with an
People
upset, or is Outlaw Run going to hold
No, no,
strong
no,
here?
no. Let's not get silly here. Outlaw Run was ranked number three three last year. Raven, even though people were talking about how much better it was running, at last year's Hollywood Nights, that's the other one people were really talking about. There's no way here. Come on.
And I think most people agree, almost 100%, not quite. A couple people thinking Raven's going to pull the upset here, but a vast majority going with Outlaw Run. And it is Outlaw Run moving on from Silver Dollar City here again. Not a huge surprise here, I don't think. So then Outlaw Run's going to go up against the winner of our next matchup, which is Goliath from Six Flags Great America, from your home park there,
Yeah.
which is going up against El Toro from Six Flags Great Adventure. My closest Six Flags park. So this is one that at least history tells you is kind of a slam dunk with El Toro, but El Toro has also been on a little bit of a decline. Some people are predicting that it'll kind of fall off a mini cliff, and it hasn't come quite yet, although the symptoms of that happening are maybe there. A 90-10 split on the bracket submissions in favor of El Toro, so people aren't buying the El Toro cliff drop just yet.
Yeah, El
90
Toro's still at number five. Goliath is still at last year at 19. So that's another big jump.
Goliath was really that low? I don't remember it being that low.
Goliath was 19 at Great America last year, 86.93. El Toro 91.86. So
Okay, so that's a pretty
there's
significant gap
that's a gap. That's a
yeah,
gap for sure.
yeah. Well, that gap does hold true. It is El Toro moving on to face Outlaw Run. And again, as fate would have it, it seems like we always get Outlaw Run and El Toro somewhere in the tournament every single year.
it's almost like you have to in this poll. Like
Well,
it's
and the fact of the matter is when they're both in the top five, it's a really nice one to try and have. And again, when you're both in the top five, you're going to win a lot of matchups. At some point, it's inevitable that you're going to have a lot of rematches, but
Mhm.
more so than most, aside from like Voyage and Lightning Rod in the championship a bunch the last 5 or 6 years, this seems to be the matchup that we always find somewhere here. And it's going to be in the
Yeah.
second round this year.
Yeah, and I don't know if the result's any different. So
Well, yeah, we'll have to see. All right, so our next matchup is again two amazing logos here. The Wodan
right.
Timber Coaster from Europa Park in Germany going up against the Coney Island Cyclone from Brooklyn, New York. And this is one that was a little less decisive than some of the other ones. A little over 80% of the people picking Wodan here, so still pretty decisive. But what I mean, Coney Island Cyclone is one that hasn't been in the Thrilling
Yeah, it
32.
was ranked 36 last year. Wodan's 14.
So there is a disparate gap there.
Like you're talking about 89.26 versus 76. You're talking about like a significant gap. Maybe one of the biggest gaps that we see in this whole poll.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a surprise that, quite frankly, I'm a little surprised that as many people pick Cyclone as they did.
Yeah,
So
that's a weird choice.
so are people like, oh well, Cyclone's in the Thrilling 32. It obviously went up, so maybe they're thinking something happened here.
I don't know,
You're a
but
Coney Island Cyclone fan.
I am, but I'm not gonna sit there and talk silly either. So
Well, that's right. Don't beat yourself,
yeah,
right?
don't beat yourself in this poll.
It is Wodan Timber Coaster moving on here in the Rolling Thunder group to the second round. And now Wodan will have the opportunity to play the winner of our final matchup of the evening, and that is Boardwalk Bullet from Kima Boardwalk in Texas going up against Ghost Rider from Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California. You and I are both huge Ghost Rider fans. I know you haven't ridden Boardwalk Bullet. I am also a huge Boardwalk Bullet fan, and I actually rank these two closer together than you would probably think. I mean, they have a lot of similarities. Ghost Rider is more of a double out and back. Boardwalk Bullet's very much a twister ride, but they have a lot of similar characteristics when you break them down.
I was just reading something on the Twitter the other day, and they were making the argument that if Boardwalk Bullet was at any major park in America, any major park, that its ranking would be significantly higher. Because if it was at a Six Flags or Cedar Fair Park or anywhere else besides Houston on a boardwalk, that ride would probably be significantly higher ranked. And everything I've heard, that every single person that goes out there and rides it always has great things to say about Boardwalk Bullet. Is it better than Ghost Rider? I don't have to even write it to know that answer is no, because Ghost Rider is one of the elite roller coasters, one of the elite wood roller coasters on this planet.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's still not ranked in the top five is still a travesty of justice, in my opinion. Um, I do think it will win this matchup, but I do not think that Ghost Rider will hit the top five this year. I still don't think it's going to happen. I think these wood numbers are kind of settling in. Ghost Rider, by far, though, is one of the best wood coasters in the world, and is the offense level there is the offense level that I took when Cyclone wasn't in the poll at all last year. The offense level that I take with Prowler being ranked in the 20s and Ghost Rider not being in the top five is another one of those offense levels that I take.
Yeah, I mean, Ghost Rider is a tremendous ride, and again, I do rank these rides really close to each other. I still have Ghost Rider slightly higher. I feel like if more people had ridden Boardwalk Bullet, this would be a significantly closer. Because where were they again last year? Did you say?
I think I said so. Ghost Rider was not 8 and Boardwalk Bullet was 17.
Okay, so that's a little bit closer than I
Yeah.
than I thought it was.
So
I
Ghost Rider
remember.
91.5, Boardwalk Bullet 87.3. So you're looking at
Okay.
a good 4%
Okay.
there.
I remember Boardwalk Bullet was in the 20s the first couple of years that it was in
Yeah.
here. So it's slowly making its way up, but not
And
quite in
I
the
think it's
Ghost
going to
Rider
continue
category.
to make its way up. Looking at the stuff that's immediately above it, I feel like Boardwalk Bullet has the most room to grow as people get down there. Like I still haven't been down to there to Houston to ride it. And I think once everything I hear about it says is probably a ride that I would like. So I would
Yeah, I mean
down.
there's no bullshit on Boardwalk Bullet. It's fast, it's
Yeah.
compact, it's tight. It's not the smoothest ride in the world. So, but if you ride in the front seat, if you don't like the shimmy shake of the wood coasters and ride in the front seat, you can get through it without hating it. And there's still lots of good airtime. It's good in the front. It's better in the back, but it's still really, really good in the front.
Mhm.
To me, the big surprise is that not a single person at this point has picked Boardwalk Bullet.
Oh,
But again, if they're relying on purely last year's rankings, then that seems to make
that
sense.
makes
I'm,
sense.
I'm surprised there's not at least one or two people that took a shot on Boardwalk Bullet
Mm.
here. But we'll see. But those people are correct. It is Ghost Rider. Moving on to the next round here. So in the Rolling Thunder group, we've got Outlaw Run beating Raven. We've got El Toro beating Goliath. We've got Wodan beating Coney Island Cyclone. We have Ghost Rider knocking off Boardwalk Bullet. So we've eliminated our thrilling 32 wood coasters down to 16 tonight. A couple of stats here. Again, this is some of the advanced metrics that we're doing this year. We asked you how relevant you would describe the following factors to your selections in the wood coaster bracket here. And here's what we had. The previous polls rankings, pretty much almost everybody saying either very relevant or somewhat relevant. So people leaning pretty heavily on last year's polls. Less people saying very relevant to older poll rankings, 2021 or earlier. So people still using older years rankings, but not quite as much. Nobody, this makes me happy here. Nobody, at least at the time of recording, said very relevant to other poll results.
Well,
So they're saying somewhat relevant or not at all relevant. So people are relying on Thrilling 32 and not other polls to make their decisions, which makes me happy. That makes
probably
me think that people
wise.
are in the
Probably
poll.
wise to do
Um, a lot of people in the middle on personal rankings and opinions, somewhat relevant. Also, a lot of people in the middle with other people's rankings and opinions. A few more people saying very relevant there. Here's what's interesting. Almost everybody saying at least somewhat relevant and a few very relevant to just flat out taking a guess.
Well, there was one person on the comments that said that they just took guesses on everything and just said, you know what? I'm not going to look at anything. I'm not going to research anything. I'm just going to go with how I feel and see how it goes. Well, we'll see.
And sometimes that will win
That
you a
works out.
championship. And then other factors in there, people saying somewhat relevant to some other factors. I don't know what some of those other ones are, but those are certainly there. So a nice variety of methods, I think, here, at least for the wood coasters. I'm curious to see how that shakes out with the steel coasters. But
Well, and the steel coaster list is a lot harder than this list. That
that's
this
we've
should be
only
where
just
you make up
begun.
your points. That you should be able to capture a fair number of points on the wood bracket by this point. And if you don't, that's going to put you in serious trouble because we know that steel side is going to be a bloodbath. I don't even know what the hell's going to happen.
Yeah, and I feel really bad for the people who had like some of those matchups that were 30-70, 60-40, and close to 50-50. I
Yeah,
feel really bad for the few people that had all of those wrong because it ain't getting better for you
it's
folks.
not going to
You're
get
in trouble.
any better from this
You're
point.
in trouble.
You're in big trouble. So
uh, any final thoughts from you tonight, Mr. Barchek?
yeah, I think we're in for something on this next show here. I'm really excited. I think there's gonna be people swearing, there's gonna be people cursing your name. This one probably not so much. This one I think pretty much went pretty straightforward, but next show, I think we're
Yeah,
gonna get some letters in the mail. I think we're gonna get some
yeah,
comments down
a
there.
lot of chalk, a lot of chalk. Maybe three or four upsets, but I think a couple of them were upsets that you could see coming.
Yeah,
So I don't think we've had too many surprises here just yet.
yeah. So well, I'm excited whenever that comes out.
Well, yeah.
So, as always, thank you for joining us here. I'm, of course, Andrew Barchak from Chicago, Illinois.
I'm Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
Right on, right, Warriors.
See you next time, guys.